like to think of the disciples as having it all together. I find a lot of comfort in the moments in Gospels when we realize they just really didn't. Both Thomas and Philip in this text are asking Jesus questions that Jesus seems to think they really should already know the answers to. And I think probably they should have. If they had listened to Jesus, they had been walking with Jesus on this journey. And you would think, come on, guys, you're walking with God, like in flesh, right there. Surely you would get it. But they don't. And I find a lot of comfort in that because there are times in our lives, I think, when we don't really get it, or we don't quite believe exactly what we hear in the Gospels. And I find comfort in knowing that even the people who were with Jesus in those days, when Jesus was like just walking around and saying this stuff for the first time, they didn't even get it. So it's kind of okay for us, I think, to sometimes not quite get it the way we think we should. And of course, when Thomas says, Jesus, we don't know these things you say we know, Jesus doesn't say, well, fine then, I'm going somewhere else, I'll find some other people. And when Philip says, just give us a little bit more and then we'll be satisfied, Jesus doesn't say, no, I've given you all I have, I'm done now. Jesus stays with them, right, and works with them, and does his best to reiterate what they have already known and seen and experienced and heard. And so in those moments in our lives, too, when we just don't quite get it, and maybe we have to ask Jesus one more time to, what was that thing you said? I wasn't really listening. I got this notification from Facebook, and I was trying to listen, but I was looking at my phone. Jesus, could you just say it one more time? And Jesus does. So I think there's a lot of comfort to be found in this text. And this is a text that I think we need to be finding some comfort in. This is the third time in 5 days that I have preached on this text. It's a popular one for funerals. And both Grace and Sigrid, Grace had selected it for her funeral, and Sigrid's family selected it for her funeral. And it was a very long day on Thursday. But we got to hear this text twice that day, and we get to hear it again today. And so we know even when we falter or don't quite get it, or don't quite hear what Jesus was saying because we got distracted by something else, Jesus will reiterate it for us in a way that we can imagine was generally gracious, perhaps a little bit frustrated because he was fully human. And the parent of 3 young children, I do my best to be gracious, though sometimes frustrated. I said, socks. Would you please go get your socks? What? My baby? No, socks. Just go get your socks. Done. So we have this Jesus who offers us again and again what we need to hear. And this is what we need to hear. And I think even if we don't forget it, we do need to hear it again and again. I am going to prepare a place for you. I am coming again to take you to myself so that wherever I am, you will be there too. I think this is what we need to hear. No matter how often we might forget or get distracted or not quite hear properly or not quite believe as much as maybe we think we should, Jesus is preparing a place for us. Jesus is coming back for us. And Jesus is taking us to himself, so that wherever Jesus is, we may be there. Wherever Jesus is, we might be there. This weekend, as I think Ken is going to talk about a little bit in the announcements, the New Jersey Synod had our annual assembly, which is like a day-and-a-half long meeting with some singing thrown in and a really nice dinner. But this is where we find Jesus sometimes, right? Is in these formal church organized events where we do have these sometimes boring meetings, sometimes interesting, sometimes discussion that you're not really sure why we're having, or a discussion that you think we should have been having years ago. And we can find Jesus with us in those moments, and Jesus bringing us together in those moments of doing the sort of business of the church. And then another, several opportunities we had over the 2 days was to worship together. And I think everybody sort of expects to find Jesus in worship, right? But to gather together in such a large group of over 300 people from around the state, this is where Jesus has brought us to himself. In the bread and the wine of communion, and in the community that we have with each other. And then in the reports that we heard from the different organizations in the Synod, the different committees and teams and task forces, and there's like so many different ways to label a group of people doing stuff. But in all of those reports, we heard the ways in which Jesus is going ahead to prepare a place for us, or in which Jesus is calling us to be his hands and feet and work in the world, to prepare places for others. In all of these ways, at Synod Assembly, we heard about Jesus, and we experienced Jesus preparing a place for us, coming to us, drawing us into himself and together. The other times that I preached on this text on Thursday, we experienced Jesus drawing us together as a community in himself. And in those moments, we had a place prepared for us to share our sorrow and to share our comfort with each other. This morning, we experienced Jesus drawing us together in this place. And he has prepared a place for all of us at this table. And as we go out into our lives, we can find other ways in which Jesus is preparing a place for us, drawing us to himself. And certainly, as we remembered our baptisms at the beginning of worship, we know, even though sometimes like Thomas and Philip and many of the other disciples, we might not know it, but we know that ultimately, in baptism, Jesus has done the ultimate coming to us and drawing us to himself, so that when the time comes for our mortal lives to end, we can have faith and find comfort in the knowledge that Jesus has gone to prepare a place for us. And Jesus is coming again, and taking us to himself, so that where Jesus is, there we may be also. Amen.
Amen.